Fighting hard, family torn apart. Whispers tearing lives, hearts raw scarred. Judges grinning, deals in shadows locked. Case workers speaking truth they've mocked. Gunning on for justice, rage intense. Bringing kids home from this broken fence. Corruption weighs heavy, laws collapse. Kids go missing behind their maps. CPS stealing kids, no trace. Lies build walls, the truth they erase. Gunners howl, cuts through the air. He won't stop midnight, he'll get there. Dark hallways where the guilty play. Secrets hiding, hope fades away. A man with fire, voice like a storm. Breaking chains, reform, transform. Gunning on for justice, rage intense. Bringing kids home from this broken fence. Corruption weighs heavy, laws collapse. Kids go missing behind their maps. Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days, cut through the lies, light ablaze. Family shattered, cries dulled by fights. CPS takes them in the dead of night. But Gunner speaks of brighter days, cut through the lies, light ablaze. Behind their maps.
Hey look, this for every mama got her baby snatched on some bogus shit. For every pops they locked out the crib like he ain't blood. CPS, y'all been eating off pain for too long. We know what you on, but now it's war, this gunning foe. CPS. Kick doors, no warrants, they taking our seeds. Say it's neglect, but they planting they greed. Feds in they pocket, judge got a fee. Run it like a business, adoption spree. Contracts overseas, got partners in France. But shorty from Shy, he ain't get a chance. Mama work 2 jobs, daddy do right, but they still snatch his baby in the middle of the night. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's Suffer Davis popping and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruined good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They labeled us monsters, called us unfit, but it's they paperwork dirty, all of it forged and flipped. How the fuck they selling babies to a bidder overseas? Then tell the fam you unworthy. Man, please, we got mamas in pain, daddies in tears. They breaking our hearts, been doing it for years. Now we riding with Gunner, and we got the proof. Sworn under oath, now it's time for truth. Trump got the team and the pen in his hand. He said bring them home, now that's the plan. You feds been hiding, but it's over now. We moving like an army, and we ain't bowing down. Fuck CPS, they ain't saving shit. Just a system full of snakes getting rich off kids. We see through the cap, we done taken the hit. Now it's off of Davis popping, and we loaded the clip. Gunna got the case, now we in that fight. Taking this to SCOTUS, shining that light. They ruined good homes, now we flipping that script. Time to bring them back, time to empty the clip. They ain't gods, they ain't law, they just people, corrupt people. And when the people rise, ain't no system safe. The Chi-Town, it's the movement. We gunning for CPS, and we coming heavy. Yeah. Wait.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Gunning for CPS. I'm your host, Gunner. It's Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, our regularly scheduled program here. Tonight we're going to take and kind of pick up where we left off a little bit. Last, I know we got caught up on a lot of things. Usually the first part of our section, we give you guys a quick update and everything else. We've made some, and sorry we've been quiet, and once again, if many of you don't know what's been going on, my wife Sharon, that was up in Kentucky, had her children kidnapped from her under false pretenses, falsified documents, a corrupt judge. And when I say a corrupt judge, I'm saying a judge that covers 2 counties in the state of Kentucky, that before she adjudicated anything in that case on the record, specifically says that she hates homeschooling, knowing my wife takes and homeschools, and then proceeded to take her children after that with no other reason than she hated homeschools, which is a direct violation against the president of the United States in this country that has given an executive order that parents have the right to choose whether or not to homeschool their children. This is happening a lot in the state of Kentucky. Believe it or not, I got another text message just early this morning, so on and so forth, that in another whole other county, a sheriff actually took somebody's children and a judge, both on the record, that believes that homeschooling is illegal without a college degree in the state of Kentucky. This shows the absolute ignorance of our judicial system and law enforcement to not enforce what are considered the laws of this land, but their own bias and prejudice, which is what the Constitution limits those serving in government roles, whether elected, appointed officials or actors, are constrained not to do. The Constitution wasn't meant to constrain the people. It was to restrain government or those serving in government. It's even been said that, that we shouldn't be, if we're coming to a time of tyranny. Tyranny was defined by our founding fathers is when the people fear their government. It's when the government fears the people that we're truly living under the Constitution. And that's our founding fathers. And they knew it would come to, those things would happen to try and overthrow our constitutional republic. We do not live in a democracy. There is a difference. If you want to understand that, it's easy. Go to a YouTube video and you can go listen to Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey made a very good radio broadcast on the difference between a democracy and a constitutional republic. And we've had a lot of digging this week to understand that a lot of the Rockefellers and a lot of the different things throughout history of these things of centralized banking and a lot of those people that had these powers and other powerful families that today are now corporations such as BlackRock and some of those others, um, that it came down to idealism of communism, so on and so forth. And now it's even coming forward that the Martin Luther King, we've all heard of MK Ultra, the JFK assassination, the assassination of Martin Luther King, so on and so forth. But there are now things popping up about Martin Luther King that Martin Luther King was a psyop individual, that it was based on communism, which we know a lot of things with Malcolm X had a lot to do with, a lot of the freedom and how to understand that they were shaking off tyranny. But now we have an understanding of the time that these people were living in, especially when people of our own government assassinated a sitting president. It goes and rewrites a lot of our history or things we've been taught, or even things that are taught in the classroom today, of not being true. What we're finding out is a lot of the idealisms was for communism and socialism to overtake America, not through war, but through the silent, slow movements throughout time, which were also found in Karl Marx's book. The foundations of communism, I believe, was the name of the book. You guys can look that up. But Stalin was a big proponent of this, and Stalin financed and did these schools in America, utilizing some of our own freedoms, calling it religions. And there was a lot of things, and this is funny that it was in Tennessee that through this research with Martin Luther King, attended a school as well as a lot of others in Tennessee that dealt with Marxism and communism and bringing that into the area. And the first attack within our country was what they perceived to be the biggest threat, believe it or not, was Black America, because they were out. Their cycles of bearing children were higher than the amount of white people, in the sense of family was stronger. And it has been attacked constantly to what you see today. And people say, well, they weren't families back then, and this wasn't happening in slavery. That wasn't true. Families were usually bought, on the slave trade. They said they tried to keep them together because it was more, they functioned better. They understood, once again, it's a work ethic type of thing. You're going to have people that have worked together all their lives, or throughout a majority of their lives, are going to work together better or sync faster to do the tasks than it is to train everybody from the very beginning. That's what makes a startup of a company so difficult, to train everybody in each of the different roles and to share the vision. And one of the things that we ended up doing, this particular week, we've had some house issues and a few other things that are going on, this and that. But yes, they took Sharon's kids. So Beauty and Ashes has taken a break for a while until some of this gets cleared up. But one of the good things we found out that just blew our mind upon research, which we're getting ready to file a bunch of stuff in Kentucky. We're going to shut down that judge. We are filing complaints against that judge. We're also we're in the process of doing a couple other things, going to the U.S. Attorney General and filing criminal charges against all people in both Tennessee and Kentucky. In our case, the criminal aspects of turning that over for the criminal investigations to begin. We did sort some of that out. So we did clarify that, instead of just going to the DOJ, like the U.S. Attorney's Office and or the FBI, we did find that there is a form that you can fill out on the U.S. Attorney General's. And once again, you got to remember how we keep telling you guys, fight in the right court. Well, you got to find the right place to file the right paper. That's what, and we're learning as we go, and we're sharing that with you as we go along what we learn. Well, one of the other things that we found out, and we didn't realize it until it was amended, it was actually a state statute or code here in Tennessee that specifically says, when it comes to forensic interviews, those type of things, they have to meet a standard. And the standard, once again, if you don't know those things are there, you don't know. Well, they amended it earlier this year, saying that the forensic interviewer and or the child can testify that the statements and the questioning and everything else is true that is in the forensic interview when they play these videos. But it is an absolute requirement that the child be provided in the courtroom for cross-examination. This goes back to due process. The reason that this was filed was a specific category of saying, listen, to meet the due process clause, you have to face your accuser. Well, we brought this up several times during our case, our appeal within the state, so on and so forth. So our next step with that would be the Tennessee Superior Court of Appeals. In other words, it's the higher of the state court. And that never happened in our case, where there was no cross-examination even available. As a matter of fact, the GAL that was for the child. Now, understand, if you guys have listened to a part of our case, the CAC center that did the forensic interview, we did a subpoena on the video footage of this because the child was forced to be left alone at the CAC center in Blount County, Tennessee. And when we subpoenaed those records, say, hey, we want to see the video footage because you got a child that's been left there for 2 hours. It was the child coached? Was this happened? Did you say, hey, say this, and then otherwise you can't see your mom? Those type of things. The idea is to keep it pure. It's been deleted, and it was deleted every 15 days. They admitted to it in a response to that subpoena, which brings it into question, which of course the courts didn't give a shit about because they're going to cover their butts. But what we didn't know at the time is the requirement, even under our state, once again, state and federal, different things. The state of Tennessee requires cross-examination to be there to happen. Otherwise, the forensic interview cannot even be admitted into court. And with our particulars of our case, it's the only thing they had. There was no corroborating anything. Matter of fact, the other evidence that they ignored pointed to something completely different, that it should have gone no further. Matter of fact, even keeping out, as you'll see, even in their own handbook and everything that says this, that CPS and the GALs are required to pull all medical records, including psych records. And they didn't want that admitted. Matter of fact, they had that out. And I'm going to put it out there. That GAL in Blount County was Gina Jenkins. And there's a lot of people in Blount County here in Tennessee that say, oh my gosh, and Gina, you want to try and sue me or come after me? Oh, I did. Guess what? I've got the dead nuts proof that you did. Because, you did not look after the constitutional rights of the children. The other thing is during the forensic interviews, there was required for somebody, their attorney, to be present for those particular things. Those questions, you guys got to understand that about forensic interviews. You need to turn around and say, did you give them an opportunity to have an attorney? Because here's the thing, children even is protected under the Constitution. They look towards the parents to take and make sure those constitutional rights are preserved as the number one defense. But if the parents are gone, they still have that constitutional right, 100%, your children, to have an attorney present to protect their rights. And no attorney was present during this. Well, we had a law enforcement officer, crooked motherfucker, that was at the CAC center. And I'm not holding back on that. Crooked, you dereliction of duty. You had people coercing people to contract, threatening and intimidate them. And yet you did nothing. You violated your oath. And I guarantee you, you're going to find out when it comes to the criminal side too, you're going to be brought to the fullest extent of the law, because you're going to have some answer. You're going to have to answer some stuff. And once again, questioning of children, yes, they have the right to remain silent. When was that ever given during a forensic interview? With any forensic interview, no, you must talk to us. Hell, they even tried to coach my wife around. Hey, tell your children that they can trust us and they can talk to us. That's coercion. That's intimidating. That's manipulating a child. But you're after people. You're the biggest manipulators out there. And there's the thing, you're going to be exposed. We're done. Listen, guys, we did receive something this week. If you guys don't know, that we do have a P.O. box, both Gunning for CPS and Beauty and Ashes in here. And we have a P.O. box, and you can put our show names in there. I'll try and put it in here too. You can put it, the name of the show, and I'll try and put it in the comments if you guys want to do this. But I just want to take some time to share this. Uh, give me a second. I'll put this in here, and then it's a PO box number. That way, it keeps our privacy and everything else. Um, but if you guys get a chance, like I said, if you want to send little gifts, little cool things that you have, or this and that, even just a little letter, a little note, or something of encouragement, especially with everything that we've got going on. I'm going to put it there in the comments. The name of the show, P.O. Box 4806, Maryville, Tennessee 37802. You can send us some stuff. Now, listen, this week we got something in the mail, or in that box, and we got some shirts too. Once again, I think those are in the wash. But we got a thank you card with some really cool stuff. And I'm just going to read it to you. And these are the type of things when people that are on the front lines, we love to have those words of encouragement. And it's from Alicia. They're out of Nashville. They were the big watchers of the show and everything else. It says, thank you for sharing your knowledge and helping families fight back. We appreciate all your insight. Alicia and family, like I said, they sent a custom t-shirt that they had designed, and they give us a little, I think it's a window cling here. And I don't know if you guys, it's pretty cool. If you see it, it says Child Protective Services, and it says abolish the corrupt system. And then it goes on for CPS. If you see that, CPS breaking news is for the channel, and it's got that child's head. So I greatly appreciate this. I wanted to say thank you on the air for those gifts from myself and Sharon. But like I said, it's just been mad crazy. We've had a couple other things happen this week, but last week was very intense with a lot of things. A lot of things are going to get ready to get filed this week. That's going to change everything. But filing in that Tennessee thing that I was going back to, it's enough to dismiss every bit of our case. And what better way to give them a black eye than to turn around and go, not only didn't you do this, but under that particular thing that you have there, the reason that's in there is it's a due process violation. That if you don't do this, the due process was violated, which means it proves, because they didn't do that before the magistrate or the judge, that both of them violated our constitutional rights of due process in both courts, in both state courts. That's just that is a huge thing. It's hard evidence. It's enough for the state that will have to admit. And some people say, well, how do you get the state to give permission to sue? You overturn your case, and you as you file that appeal. And when you file that appeal, you also turn around and say, listen, we've got an active case, and we're looking, because this happened, we want to be able to sue, this and that, to give permission. And they have to admit to it, because the evidence they just adjudicated on it to overturn the case just for that. That's one of the filings we're working on this week that's going to turn everything around. To prove, even within the state courts, they have to. Why? Because what it says in there under that particular rule, that Tennessee code said it's the standard. In other words, it's a must. But it also says within that, where they change that to where they must testify, or the child must testify, that these things are actually true, or get on the stand and say it is, that it doesn't discount that the child must be available for cross-examination. And it never happened in our case. That is so big. You guys, especially if you're in Tennessee and you've had a forensic interview and your child's been taken from you and all these other things, and your child never took and testified, you can go back and look under the rules of forensic interview, and it's an updated thing for 2025. You can now file an appeal with the state of Tennessee to have your case overturned and get your children and your family back if they were not available for cross-examination. That's huge. That's absolutely huge. Matter of fact, I'm going to encourage you, if you're in other states, go look up if a forensic interview was used in your case, and that was a pivotal part of their case. And in my particular, it was the only part of the case. That means they have to undo everything. They have to remove my name from their internal system. They have to undo this. They have to, in other words, That's fraud. And here's the thing, the judges and the magistrates are now 100% guilty of a crime of violating not only that code, but it's a due process thing, that it now becomes a violation of their oath, which automatically means we're going to have to refile some things, some complaints on the judges to have them removed. As well as this one in Kentucky. In Kentucky, it's a JCC. The other one is the Board of Judicial Accountability, I believe is what it's called in Tennessee. And each state has their own. And that's what you file the complaints for, of saying, this is what happened. You didn't follow this code, which is also a due process violation, which is also a violation of their oath, which by law and by even, the bar and everything else calls for the immediate removal of that judge and that magistrate. Now, I'm going to give some good news, because every once in a while, if most of you don't know, man, people don't understand what are your connection with some of these other people. I'm not really connected in a way with Tanawa, but there is some overlapping things. That Jessica Saxton, that works with Tanawa, actually her original case is right here in Blount County, Tennessee, with the same judge, Judge Harrington. That's right, you're being called out. Judge Harrington violated her oath when she didn't allow due process and cross-examination. And here's the thing, judges and magistrates cannot claim ignorance of the law, because it's a slap in the face to the law and the Constitution. Well, guys, that's to give you the quick update. There's kind of like the first part of the show where we're at. And like I said, there's that information. If you want to take, and here, I'm going to put it at the bottom of the screen. You guys want to do, if you guys got something for me or Sharon, like I said, something like that, just a little note card, especially with everything she's going through. She's having to take a break because of the mental health, and kind of take a step back with some of those things, till we get some of these filings and we get all this cleared up. And that's going to be a slap in the face for Kentucky of going, oh, wait a minute, they're getting ready to have their case completely overturned. Yeah, that means you kidnapped. And the information come out, and there ain't nothing CPS can do. Why? Because there's no arguments on any side with appeals, especially in the Supreme Court. They have to follow the code. If they don't follow the code, then it goes up to even the higher court, to the federal court, of saying they didn't even follow their own policies or procedures, especially when you quote it and say, this didn't happen. And we did have it dictated and recorded and typed out line by line, but it just never happened. So they can't deny it. Guys, I want to have you take a welcome tonight as we begin to have our discussion on the Declaration of Independence. Welcome the CPS Punisher himself, Darren. Bring yourself out here, and let's kick the pig here. You got no sound there, Bubba.
Oh, I don't, but I do now. There we go. Just coming over here.
Meat and potatoes a little earlier. Good show, man.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It was a good topic tonight. And in the spirit, I guess, of Charlie Kirk, it was good to see that, there was a black man, a white guy talking and discussing the Confederate flag, about words that aren't used proper, amongst groups and things like that. And it just proved that we can go out and we can agree to disagree. We don't need to fight. There doesn't need to be any name calling. There doesn't have to be any of that stuff. Just straight up, let's just agree to disagree and move on. And you know what? Maybe you can get your point across to some people. Maybe you can't. But the fact that you can just discuss these things without lobbing dynamite at one another, or, doing something ridiculous like has been done in this past week, that's just a show, like, in the spirit of him, man. That's the way discussions are supposed to be done. Unfortunately, that with that rude comment at the end, but whatever, that's neither here nor there. We don't need to give any publicity about that.
The old keyboard warrior that if you said that in person, you get your teeth knocked out.
Correct.
The birth of the internet and all that, things that we have no accountability for our words or actions, which actually we're seeing a change in that in our country, with people actually putting things on social media and or TikToks and videos and this and that are have said some very inappropriate, disgusting things, which in my aspect of, you're agreeing with using acts of violence to take away constitutional rights. And that's an act of war against this country. I will not back down from that statement, but to agree with that, and most of them having communist and Marxist views, which is where I think we really need to take a larger stance on that to make that criminal for that to be taught anything other than that, as well as Sharia law, as well as some of the other, because it's unconstitutional. We have to take a hard stand on some things, and we can't have this soft-handed. Welcome to America, love everybody, welcome to this. And no, we've still got to have boundaries. We have to have circles, and these are things that are not being taught as we're integrating, or as people try to push us towards a one world government or this one world thing. We're still Americans. As a matter of fact, our Constitution forbids us of signing any treaty that would violate the Constitution. Which I think we really need to, I believe we need to examine as a country and actually terminate some of those treaties due to the fact it's in direct conflict of our Constitution.
I agree with you 1,000%. I think what everybody needs to do is actually take a step back from everything and look at the Constitution, read the Constitution, and understand what is in the Constitution, not just the Constitution, but the Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, these documents, the Federalist Papers, the Magna Carta, all of these papers and all of these documents which establish this country that we are in. I think everybody should sit back and, there's plenty of classes online, like Coursera has some, a lot of these free places that you can go to and take these little lectures, 45 minutes up to, like a full course or whatever for free. And that would give you some insight of why it is so important, and not even why it is so important, but it's what is so important about what they're saying and what it is to us, because I don't think a lot of people still grasp the fact that the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all of these things were not made for us. It was made to contain them. Now, of course, the Bill of Rights and everything are about us and moving, but all of these things were created so that our government would be under the control of us. And these are the guidelines and these things that we need to follow to keep our government in check. And I think this is the big problem right now. And we're losing this fight, man, because Donald Trump has handed off the torch to the people, and the people don't know what to do with the torch. That's the unfortunate part, is they're sitting there. And I think that he, as the president, had a great intentions, still does have great intentions. But the fact that people don't even know the difference between a democracy and a republic, like how do you even know how to take that when he said, okay, I gave you guys back the republic? Like if you don't even know what those things are, then how can we fight for those? So people need to take a step back, go read these documents or watch these shows, because every one of these shows, we all explain this stuff. Like it's the common ground here for CPS breaking news shows and all of our shows. There's the Constitution and the way that we imply these things to our everyday lives, how we invoke them if we're in court proceedings or whatever, because they won't let you use this stuff. They do not want you using the rights that you are given, nor do they want you using your inalienable rights. And they will shut you down at a moment's notice. So if you don't know what they are, you can't fight them, and you just let them win over and over and over.
I've noticed that pattern too, with a lot of people say, well, the judge won't let me talk. Once again, you don't need the judge's permission to talk in a courtroom. You can go, Your Honor, this is going on the record, and talk over the judge. I'm going to find you in contempt of that, Your Honor. To silence me is a violation of your oath, and you understand violating your oath is an act of treason enough to have you hung.
And
there's
I don't think
powerful words.
That. Right. That's it. And people don't understand the penalties for pushing you down as a citizen of the United States. That's not what any of this was intended for. Even if you look at the manual of the United States of America, which there is a legitimate manual for the United States of America, like a guide, a handbook or whatever. And at the very tip top of this, man, it's we the people. Then it goes to the Constitution. Then it goes to this and this and this, and it drops down through. But if you don't know, and I'm Gunner too, if you don't know that, you have these rights and you use them, I don't think it's a matter that they're not educated. I think it's just the fact that people just don't understand or know that the intentions of this stuff is in the wrong place. Everybody's like, oh, it's my Constitution. It's it is, but it's for you to keep the government in check.
And here's the thing about the Constitution as we begin to get into the Declaration here. And one of the beautiful things that we have with the internet, and this is the misuse of the internet, is you have at your fingertips, literally more than your fingertips on your phone, the ability to get a college education right off of your phone that you've
Mhm.
never had in decades past.
Right.
The amount of knowledge and everything, every library book, everything you want to look it up, Google it, find this
Mhm.
book, read the book, Kindle, all these other things, this and that, and you can go back of even and we'll start some of this even tonight. When you go back and say, well, go back and find, the original. Okay, well, what do you do with the original? Well, let's look at the original.
Mhm.
This is us. This is the Declaration of Independence. Now, this isn't just the Declaration of Independence. This is the one that was put before the first Congress, the first assembly, to approve. Oh, yeah, it's not the here's the one that we're going to go for. And like I said, going through this, and like I said, as you'll look, this is the difference between the two. In Congress. Now, we're not talking about a revised version. We're not talking
Mhm.
this. This is under the House. This was the stuff that was put before. And guys, I'm going to put your comments in the background here. It's not that we don't love you, just that we've got, it's easier to see the screen. You'll see everything. Tell give even footnotes within this particular thing that's required to go through, with all these things. And
Mhm.
once again, it's and they don't want us to know this because this is the foundational root of our country. This
Mhm.
is just like with CPS and Title IV. And it goes under things we now call it within legal documents, we call it purpose. In other words, it's vision. Some people use the vision within our vision, or our goal is this. In other words, these are uncompromised. In other words, if they're against our purpose or goals, they're not supposed to be there. What
Mhm.
CPS is doing now is fraud on Title IV, because go back and look at Title IV under the 1930 or 1935 Social Security Act and look under the purpose. And it was to keep families together, even to eliminate
Mhm.
single family homes, to institute and hold up marriage,
Mhm.
and to gain them or benefit them and offer programs to help them stay together, to do this. And what does CPS do? It does
Mm.
just the opposite of its entire purpose. So how is it able to exist? Because nobody will go back and read the original documents because they expect, why should I have to do that? That's not my job. Well, how are you supposed to have a set of checks and balances to hold your elected and appointed officials accountable if you don't educate yourself and be a free thinker and understand, wait a minute, you don't line up with the purpose. How are you
Mm.
getting funds? That's
Mhm.
fraud.
Mhm.
Now, when we bring this to a courtroom, then a judge has a saying in what happens, whether or not they are or not. It's called accountability. But
Mhm.
let's go through the Declaration of Independence here and go
Mhm.
through it. In Congress, July 4th, 1776. Now, this is the ratified version. If you guys know what I'm talking about, you understand, because a lot of the Declaration of Independence was signed much earlier, but they couldn't get everybody together at one time because, once again, they're sneaking around committing treason against Britain. Okay, we have to take that. I bet you they didn't teach you that in school. No, they didn't all get together on one day and just draft this thing up. This thing, it was drafted long before. Betsy Ross had done the flag long before. They were in other words, this is where they pulled the trigger and made everything official. Now let's read it. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people, in other words, a group of people, us as Americans, to dissolve the political bands. Oh, powerful words there, which have connected them with another. In other words, we're breaking off from something, and to assume among the powers of the earth. Really, he didn't say the powers of man, the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them. We're not talking about policies, procedures, anything else. These are given to us by our creator. We're entitled to them. Every person is. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind. In other words, we're going to listen to some of your bullshit, but at the same time, if it's bullshit and it goes against what is nature's God's entitled them to, or the laws of nature, we can't entertain those conversations. They're supposed to be flushed away. We can't have that conversation. It's called a boundary. They're setting a huge boundary even at the very beginning of the Declaration of Independence to mankind, that they shall declare the cause which impel them to separation. In other words, there's a reason we are separating ourselves. And this is where it starts to go through. What a powerful first paragraph of saying God has given us this power under the natures and laws of this set to truly be free. And we're going to separate ourselves because you're violating with what you're doing the laws of nature and the natures of God's has entitled them. Powerful words. Let's go to the second paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident. In other words, common sense. Everybody should know this, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Listen, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, doesn't CPS violate all three of those? So how can they exist? They shouldn't at all. Organizations that go against those things, that don't encourage life and liberty and happiness is derived, that we've learned, especially later, comes from what? Within. I'm going to now that's why we tell each other to take and build each other up rather than tear each other down. And when it comes to these things in public, when we open our mouths, we think, you wonder why people of old days didn't just open their mouth at every little thing, because they took time to think before they opened their mouth. Like you were saying earlier in the other show, somebody opened their mouth without knowing something. Instead of starting with a question, right, Darren?
Right there.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
dude, what's the matter with you? Dude, you
Mhm.
look kind of messed up. Are you good? No
Mhm.
concern for the individual,
Mhm.
no compassion,
Right.
no empathy.
Let's just make a
Just
comment.
let's just make a comment that's derogatory and
Mhm.
insulting. That's not
Yep.
what we're told to do. And even our founding fathers in there put in there saying, it's like that old saying, if you ain't got nothing nice to say,
Don't
don't
say
say
it at
nothing at
all.
all.
That's right.
Those little sayings are there for a reason, because they go back to fundamental things, even within the foundation of our country.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable.
That to secure these rights, now hold on, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. Now, understand, this is a contract written here that we're breaking away, and which led to the Constitution, which is a contract. It's a contract written by we the people for the government. Our Constitution is unlike any other document in the world. In the world, it's where it restrains the people have the power. And that's what we don't see in this country anymore because of corporations and everything else. That has violated our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, which is where, like you were saying, this is what the president say, hey, I want to give you back the republic. Well, these are the foundations of the republic, that we're in control, that they fear us. Not that they could surround themselves with, Capitol Police, or, your governors with state police and this. Well, I've got my own little army. Oh no, all that should just be disbanded 100%. Why? Because now you're not doing, once again, we're not governing ourselves. That's a form of oppression with these things. What we'll call in the state. No, that, that should be there just for certain reason. But once again, why don't you have people on reserves to come up as needed? In other words, this is something we don't need all the time, which would also reduce our what? Taxes. Once again, we don't need these things. This is spending. This is you're paying for a hierarchy, or what you'll call, this is the formation they have with the governors now, act like they're dukes of England. We control a certain amount of power and land and this and that, and I'm responsible for all those people in that state, but then I have to answer to the president or to the king, is what they call it, would be the equivalent. And that's not the way it was derived. The idea is that we're in control. And this derived from the consent. We have to give consent to be governed. Do you read that? I mean, I read it right there. That's pretty. I have to give consent. If I don't give consent, your power's gone. And that's where these states, especially these state courts, are violating the very foundation of the Declaration of Independence and saying, I'm going to drag you into court. Wait a minute. I've got to give consent here, big boy. I don't consent to this shit. And if I've signed something or done something that makes you think I have consent, well, then I have the right to retract all those. Well, here, let me give you a document. I hereby, abolish everything. I withdraw every signature and everything I've ever done to any contract ever in my entire life. I am a free man. And you'll hear people make those comments in court, and the judges look at, well, you're still under my, jurisdiction. No, you're not. I have to give consent in a state court to be in your jurisdiction. That's what the Declaration of Independence says. And you're for you to be a judge that you think you have that kind of power to change or override the Declaration of Independence, that's called warring against the Constitution. That's called treason. That's why they would kill them for doing that shit. String them up and hang them for saying stupid shit like that.
That's right.
No, you don't. And for you to even think that, that's a disease. How do we cure the disease? We cut it out and we're going to hang you.
Yep.
And then we're going to strip you of everything you've got, you and your family. But they're insulated. They're insulated by what? The Bar Association. There's no mention of the bar. The bar, the idea of this and that, or even the idea of where people that were scholared or versed were very well in the not policies and procedures, but understood were people that couldn't read and write. Well, everybody should be able to read and write. And these days, there's no need for lawyers. We should be able to make our petitions known, which you should be able to do in the federal courts. And a lot of people get confused when you go to federal. Listen, federal is a lot easier in some ways than state. It really is. And there's a lot of leeway you get with doing things like pro se. You don't need an attorney. But let's go on. Consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, hold on, listen here, this is important. It is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. This is why we say abolish CPS, because it goes against the Declaration of Independence and it violates constitutional rights. Under these documents, you are required to be abolished. So we're not coming from nowhere of saying, oh, you're just looking for an uproar. This and no, according to our founding documents, this is what it says. And this is what we're saying you have violated. And even it's on the federal record now. We want you abolished. And people say reform. There's nothing to reform. It's so corrupt. The only solution is to abolish and defund it. 100%. Well, what are you going to do? Go back to families and communities and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happy. You mean our happiness is involved in all this? Yes. Yes, it is. How we feel about it. Nobody wants to have CPS come in and do this and that, or any government or this or that, especially come into your home that has Fourth Amendment protection on it, including the people inside of it. But yet they can falsify documents. Now, I heard a story, and this one kind of bothered me. I was doing some research, and this just happened to pop up. Was talking about a church that somebody was struggling in this and that family. And, mom wasn't working, stay-at-home mom. Dad had just lost his job recently. They were struggling this sad. Guys in the church were trying to find odd jobs to give them a little money to get by. And then they went to church. Then we went to the church, and there was a church meeting. Guy talked about a church meeting on Wednesday night. for the church to give them some money to help them out with food. And one of the oldest deacons stood up and goes, well, have they applied for food stamps?
Hmm.
Was not the first call of the church, if somebody's hungry, you feed them?
Correct.
Where did and this person calls them. Here's the other thing I have with that. This is why I'm so against organized religions. Y'all don't practice what the hell y'all preach. Y'all don't read anything in there. It's always somebody else's problem. No, the burden falls on you as part of their community to help one another.
Mm-hmm.
But why would you take and say, well, let me give you a perspective on this, not just from that aspect. Let's have this conversation, okay? And this is one thing a lot of people are not gonna like. Darren, let's do the math.
Okay,
If the
buddy.
church gives $100 to a person, it goes to $100. They get $100 worth of food. If I go sign up somewhere for a SNAP program and this and this and that to give somebody $100 on a SNAP account,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't just cost $100.
No.
It costs thousands of dollars. And everybody goes, what do you mean? It's costing you more to just, instead of giving out of your own pocket to use a government program, costs more. Why? Because you have to pay for the cards to be made. You have to pay for the system to get set up. You have to pay for the people to be employed to take in, do the application process, the approval process, somebody to go through what's approved, not approved, and all this other stuff. That's thousands and thousands of dollars per SNAP recipient. The cost is much greater to the American people to use any government program than to take care of it within your own community.
Mm-hmm.
That's basic accounting or running of anything on a business. 100%. Now, that kind of hits home. Well, why can't they this? Why can't they that? Here's the reason why. And I'm going to bring the comments back up during this one session. But there's the reason why it costs more. So why? And then you want to bitch about your tax dollars and everything else? Quit using fucking government programs.
Yep. Facts.
Take $20 out of your thing. You see a family do it, $20 within the community will feed a whole family. Potlucks at churches when families were really struggling, everything. You know what the foundation of potlucks were for? To feed those within the church community that couldn't, and maybe that was the only decent, healthy meal that they actually had. Farming communities still do this today. If somebody breaks their leg or this, that, and that's got to get harvested or that's got to get done. Do you know that the farmers in those communities, even though they hate fucking each other or they may have a personal disagreement or anything else, that farmer that you may disagree with will still show up to your fucking land and still work it?
Yeah.
It's called honor and integrity. It's something we used to have in this country. I may not like you, but God damn it, if you're down or anything else, it ain't about you. It's about my honor and my integrity. I'm going to do the right thing regardless. And that's something CPS cannot say at all. You wave the false flag of we're here for the children. We're here to protect the children. No, you're here to protect your pocketbook and make your money and get vacations and have training seminars in Hawaii.
Yeah.
You ever see where some of these training seminars are?
Yeah, Las Vegas, Hawaii, Disney World, like all these places.
Yeah. All these places. It comes with free tickets. And guess who pays for that? But you've got a family out here that I guarantee you, if I could take all those people out of the workforce that are doing CPS stuff all together, we got more than enough workers. As people say, who's going to cut your grass? Who's going to do this or that? That's about all these. Some of these people that have a degree in being, a socialist, we'll call it a socialist, or in social services, because that's exactly what it is. And you can't argue because the word social is in there. Social is a socialist program. It's not a free program. It's a government program. These are things that will take over this and this, that. And, Ronald Reagan had a funny thing as he said, the scariest things that you could ever hear from anybody in this country is I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
That's what was that from? That was from what president? Who said that? It was that Kennedy
Reagan.
or was that Nixon? Reagan. It was Reagan. That
Reagan.
said that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, a matter of
Yeah.
fact, that was one of his, I think, some of his campaigns, even before when he was running for office, and some of his other things, that he said a lot of things that, wow. And once again, they hid things from presidents back then. You're talking about a deep state, what we call today is the deep state, the shadow government, those people that were the puppet masters of that time, that go through these things, let alone, we've talked several times as far as, how do we say this? In other words, there's different sects. In other words, let me give you, for you guys to understand this and everybody will appreciate this, is Baptists. How many different Baptists you got? You got the First Baptist, the Northern Baptist, the Missionary Baptist, the Southern Baptist, but they're all Baptists, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing within the Jewish faith. There are many different sects of the Jewish faith. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Some are so hardcore, they're as comparable to the extremists of the Muslims, that they believe that they are God's chosen and nobody else can get in, and blah, 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 blah. And they are part of, and this has been documented, you guys can research it yourself, part of the centralized banking system. Matter of fact, it was one of the things that was misconstrued. He bunched them all together, all the Baptists together, if you will, that
Mm-hmm.
Hitler did. He wasn't against all Jews. He didn't know who to fight. He just knew that if they were Jewish, they were part of the banking system. They were part of this push for control and overthrowing Germany. You go into go back and listen to the true speech that Hitler gave.
Mm-hmm.
It's completely different than what they told us it said.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, I speak German, so I knew it from the beginning. I said, that's not what that dude's saying. No, you don't know what you're talking about. I go, yeah, I've got people that are from Germany that can tell you the same thing. That's not what he's saying. The books and everything.
Are you talking about his speech in front of the convention?
Yeah.
When he accepted his nomination or whatever.
Talking about everything else. The books that they were burning were dealing with homosexuality and transgenderism by authors that were doing some things, the things we're seeing happen today. Why? Because it's a mass perversion. What do you see the decline of? The family. Who else has gone through this recently in the past, decade, the past 2 decades, with that deconstruction and all that other stuff? Russia. Have you not listened to Putin to turn around? We're not going to have this evil or the Satanist or this type of thing in our country. We are a Christian nation. And you talk about Eastern European Christianity, especially in Russia, it's very orthodox. Yeah, I mean, very orthodox if you do some of the studies in this and that. It's bad, but there are a sect within this that understood the power and the goal. Let me put to the difference between, to where a lot of people understand. It's the same one as though you look at a sect that they lose faith so fast that they begin to melt down the gold and worship the calf. It's about the gold. It's about the power. It's about the trade. It's how they want to take and dip their hands in everything, because they understand. I've heard a lot of people say, if you want to do anything, follow the money, right? But once again, what was some of the canonizations of the book? You all do this. People say, well, money is the root of all evil. That's not what it says. It says for the love of money, or the lust is actually the proper term. The lust of money is the core of all evil. So when you're chasing all these other things and understanding, here in America, we didn't have a problem with that. Why? We didn't have a monetary system until the Federal Reserve. What did we do? We traded. You got, hey, Darren, I got 3 chickens and I got 5 dozen eggs, and you just slaughtered that
cow, whatever,
that big cow. Can I get part of that cow? And you and I do some trading, and what you feel and I feel is equal.
Correct.
We didn't need a monetary system.
Right. And that was the basis of the Bitcoin when that came out. If you look back into that, they were trying to reestablish that trade thing. Like, the Bitcoin had no value originally, and they were trying to make it so that it would go back and be bartered off the trade. Like
Yeah.
it was okay if I did a service for you, you did a service for me. We traded it off and we called it that, and that was it. And that's something they were trying to reestablish these things because they're very important. It's very important, that stuff. And like now things became a dollar amount. Opposed to before it was more or less. I feel like this is
Yeah.
my worth and this is your worth, but now it's actually literally a marked number. Like you worth
Even
this.
doctors in this country, physicians in early times, they
Mhm.
weren't very wealthy, or when they didn't have a lot of money. What you'll notice, they never went without a pie. They never went
Right.
without food. I got so many chickens.
They
I
were
got
taken
so
by
many of this
they were
and that.
taken care of by who, Runner? Who took care of them?
The
The
people.
community. Right. The people did. Right. They didn't need to have high salaries and all that stuff because they were treated like gods almost, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to people that would practice even earlier back than that. But some of the different indigenous tribes that are here, I don't really like to use the word Native American because I feel that's more of an insult. They do have a tribe and they do have an origination the same way as I have a heritage with Irish. That if you had, somebody from the Hopi tribe or the Navajo or something like that, that's how the medicine people did trading anything. They took care of the medicine woman or the medicine man. When you
Well, I
needed
mean,
something, here's food, here's that. They were well taken care of. They were the health of the community.
what did teachers used to get?
Yeah. Same thing. Pastors,
Apples,
preachers.
man. You would go to
Yeah.
school, you give your teacher an apple, an orange, a fruit, something like that. It was just your way of, here you go, teacher. It was like a thank you, and it was a way that they could, eat healthy, and they would have food and nutrition
Yeah.
and that stuff. That's what they did.
But once again, you know why they don't like that trading part? Taxation. There's no way to tax it.
Way to put their hands in on the pie.
Yep.
Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Well, let's get back. Like I said, let's go here. Let me get this
Mhm.
back up here. We've got some more time. Let's get as far as we can here. Such fires for of happiness. Okay. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Oh, in other words, it's unshakable. In other words, it's not to be reinterpreted a different way. What this is saying is don't be disillusioned by anything. We're not going to change the establishments of our country because of enlightenment or transient or because of this particular group or that particular group. This is going to stay and it should stay constant. And I know you and I have had that conversation. We shouldn't be going off of case law, that the Constitution should stand on its own merit.
Correct.
100%. It's not up for interpretation. Now, what it covers, what it doesn't, anything else, it should be common sense. In other words, in my house, if this is protected, obviously you can't come in and steal or come in, my house without these warrants or, court orders. And even then they have to be justified. They have to meet a standard to do all this stuff. And CPS, using stuff like, even in our case, or should I say in Sharon's case, where you have auto pen that was used by a judge to remove children, let alone only 2 pieces of paper for 3 children. Yet it wasn't even legal because where was the court clerk's seal? Where was the court clerk's signature? It didn't exist. Those are not legal. But you know who enforced it? The CPS workers who were there. And here's the other disgusting thing. The sheriffs that were in that county enforced that as though that was a legal document. How much ignorant shit. Those people should all be fired. And this is why President Trump has come back for everybody that's federal to say, you're going to go through a constitution class. So now you can't say, I didn't know bullshit. We're not going to do this shit anymore. But we need to be holding them accountable. Quit serving 2 masters. There's the other thing. Why? Because it says you'll love one and hate the other. That's why that cop got fired that we broke that video on, talking about how law enforcement has been violating the Constitution. And if the people wake up, you're outnumbered. You may think that you're the thin blue line and all this other stuff. Understand? You realize that the American hunter in just 2 states outnumbers any military force in the world,
Oh, I
even
didn't know
China.
that. Wow.
Yeah.
I did not
You
know
take
that.
Michigan and Wisconsin, 2 states. Look at the number of registered hunters. It outnumbers any military force in the whole world.
Wow.
That's 2 states. That's why Japan feared us. Behind every blade of grass, there is a
Mhm.
rifle. That's what scared other countries to not
From
fuck
coming
with
here.
us.
Right.
That fear has long is fading. And until we get them back in the fear of you're going to do this, so well, what about this? We had the Wild West. If you and I didn't disagree or you ran that damn mouth, there was rules to a damn gunfight. We went out and settled it.
Yes, we did.
I'll shoot your ass. Run that fucking mouth like you did earlier of accusing
Mm-hmm.
me of being this and that. That's against my honor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what? You don't believe that? You realized up in Michigan, or what was it, Michigan or Minnesota or something like that, where that father went after his daughter for an honor killing and he got off? Tried to
Oh,
kill
yeah.
his daughter that had left the house, part of the Muslims. Yeah. The Muslim
Nope.
faith, that was honor. That was our honor. Kill people for your honor. Where do you hear that anymore? Which is what's making it more appealing than Christianity to a lot of people. Because nobody wants to deal with this crap.
Nobody
But
wants any sort of responsibility, or they don't
no,
want to own it, or they don't want to stand up for it.
no,
I mean, we're finding that with that nobody's standing up for these things that
no,
are given to us, that our government has given
no.
us. Not our, I'm sorry, our government did not give it to us. Now we've been given by our forefathers and our predecessors,
Yeah.
right? Like we're not
Yep.
even taking these. So the president of the United States has given us a tremendous gift that no one is even picking up the ball and rolling with it. And this guy is sitting there on the chair. He must be shaking his freaking head. Like, where is,
Here's
he
the
thought
thing. When that went back, you know what that means? That's the power when somebody violates your constitutional rights as they were doing it. You'll see in some of the videos that I've done. And Becca, you better pop. If you want to pop in here anytime. If they cross that threshold with no warrant, no court order, and they start reaching towards your children, and you decide to exercise your Second Amendment right and kill them for violating that right and breaking into your home, then it falls back on them. Well, you murdered a state employee. No, I didn't. Where's your court order or warrant to come into my house? That's breaking and entering.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, if you're not going to adjudicate and dismiss this case to where there shouldn't even be a case, nor should I be arrested under the Constitution, because those are constitutional rights that are protected and you're protecting the institution, then we automatically go into a change of jurisdiction form on a federal filing and go, I'm going to take this to the higher court because you don't even, this is a constitutional matter. I shouldn't even be in here. You either provide me the warrant or the court order, not after the fact, because here's the thing. It's a requirement for them to have that in hand with ink, not auto pen, not digitally fucking signed like these lazy judges were doing during COVID. Ink on paper.
Wet ink.
Wet ink is a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Those days are gone. Well, you can argue technology or anything else. That's been ruled on. It is not legit. That went out with the auto pen. No electronic, no this and that. It's your hand to a quill or a pen or whatever signed in wet ink. That is the requirement. Mm-hmm. So when they stole Sharon's kid, there was no wet ink. It was well, maybe she used her iPad and this and that. That makes it illegal. 100%. Mm-hmm. And you bring it up. Where's the wet ink? I guess Becca dropped out on us. Once again, we're going through this.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, there's 14.4 million registered hunters in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
14.4 million. 5%
Those are the ones that do get the permits.
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
A lot that are hunters.
Right.
Private land.
I will bet you that is triple that number.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not even gun owners, once again, and they even say that the average American has 12 something guns.
That was just registered hunters that said 14.4 million. So, I'm sorry, 15.9 million hunting licenses.
So once again, when we realize our power, just like the movie of Ants, for the grasshoppers that are trying to establish a dictatorship over us or a tyrannical government, as these actors and everything else say. I work for the state, I work for the government. I don't give a shit. Here's the other thing. Let me put it to you real quick. You die just as easy as any other man. Your blood is red. I don't care what color you are, who you represent, anything else. You could die the same way. There's where everybody's equal. And once again, that's why they say Samuel Code made all men equal and women. Why? Because it doesn't take a big one or a small one.
Hey, Gunner.
Now, yeah.
You know what you get when you cross a penis with a potato?
I've heard it, but go ahead.
A dictator.
Dictator. Yep.
There you go.
That's dictator. And there's a lot of dictator soup going around lately.
Yes, sir.
They're serving it up here.
All right. Sorry about that.
That's all good, man. And once again, it's gone through here. The government, it's that long established, should not be changed for the light and transient cause. And accordingly, all experience hath shown. Oh, wait, we're talking about experience, history, that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable. In other words, we're known as mankind to suffer with shit rather than being so strict. Then the right themselves. Then to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. You've become comfortable. You've sold your freedom for comfortability. That is, or you've been distracted. I know you guys covered that on the last show. Hey, when this was going on, you didn't see what was going on here. Who gives a shit about Hollywood when a bill was passed in the middle of the fucking night and this went through and now we all have to do this? It affects our everyday lives. Who gives a shit about Hollywood? You know what I'm saying? They would do that all the time. Who gives a shit about that? What happened here that was happening in the House, or what was passed and what was done and what dirty shit was done and what does that bill say? Once again, we don't care. Nobody gets involved in that. You don't have accountability of those people that are voting up there, because if most of you did that was voting the way that they were, you'd have them strung up by a tree and have them recalled. What the fuck did you just do to our state and do to our county? That's what they should be fearing, is getting strung up by doing the wrong thing. But they don't. They don't fear us, and they should. But once again, it talks in here about how we get comfortable. History has shown us we'll get comfortable. Hey, I'll go ahead and take that Section 8. I'll take them food stamps. Even though it's not the best life in the world, I ain't got to fucking do nothing. I'm comfortable. I'm provided for. And we've had a lot of those misconceptions and lies and everything else. We've dealt with that before when it talks about women's lib, how it started with this and voting. Had nothing to do with voting. Had to do with land rights. They were able to get land. And with that, at that time, came the right to vote. It was hand in hand. You've been lied to. You've been lied to about Martin Luther King. You've been lied to about Malcolm X. You've been lied to that our own government shot a sitting president that was going to expose this. And people have had enough. Have had enough. But once again, sufferable, that the right themselves by abolishing the forms which they're accustomed. Wow, does that say a lot within that document? But when a long train of these, but when a long train of abuses and absurtions pursuing invariably the same object evidences, a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. In other words, to basically just put the shackles on you, to put you under a boot is what that's talking about. They have control. Here it is. It is their right. Hold on. It is their duty, not and. It's all one word with a comma there, people. You've heard a lot of people say, well, it's your right and it's your duty. No, there's no and in there. Another adding to. It said it's your right. And even to go even further, comma, it's your duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future securities. In other words, what we were doing was wrong. We need to just cut the head off the damn thing and start over again. These ain't working. CPS and all those other systems, this and that. Cut the head off of it. Get to the root of everybody that was making a dollar off this and make sure it never happens again. That's the beauty of our Constitution, is that it's a living thing and it transcends time. But once again, if you don't know that and you've not been taught that, you're not going to stand for nothing. It's talking about providing new guards, new elected officials, and this. Well, what happened to the last one? We hung the bastards.
Yeah.
We cut it out like a cancer, like a disease, and we executed them. We did it on right in the town square. Those dirty bastards and everybody else that wanted to do this, and you don't believe me? Look at the Battle of Athens. This is exactly what the Battle of Athens came back as World War II veterans that proclaimed their independence, of going, oh, hell no, we have a right and a duty. And these were fresh out of the war versus people that sat at home getting fat cats. They didn't stand a chance. Same way, if our country actually rose up between the American hunter and the American veteran, you're screwed. Then you call others out by their oath. And here's the other thing a lot of you guys don't know. If you have somebody that's a cop or anybody else like that, law enforcement, whatever it is, even a lawyer, a judge, a magistrate, so that has ever served in the military, you need to file a thing, even though they have been got their DD 214, honorably discharged, so on and so forth. At any given time, they can be recalled for violating that oath, because that oath is for life, and they will receive a military tribunal, including a military execution for violating that oath, whether they are active or not. Now, something that would hold a lot of people to fear. So, that's just crazy. But a lot of people don't know that. Going back to this, wow. Such has been the patient suffrage of these colonies. In other words, this is what they're saying the colonies were going through with Britain and everything else. And such is now the necessity. In other words, this is absolute. It's got to change, which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations about England, which we all know all through the kings and queens, of power struggles and abusing the people of Great Britain, Ireland, and other territories. This is well documented, is what they're saying, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. Which is what some of your governors and a lot of your governors think that they have the ability to do, is to be tyrannical. And you're going to have to abide by what? These statutes and codes. Oh, fuck no. To prove this, hold on, let facts be submitted to a candid world. You notice that part of the First Amendment where it says we have the right to make our petitions known was derived from the Declaration of Independence, to make your petitions known. In other words, the facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws. In other words, conforming to it, doing what they want to do, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. In other words, it only benefits the few and not the all. It's not equal protection under the law. That's where we get that term. It's derived from that, from our founding fathers. We're going to stop there for tonight as far as the Declaration of Independence. And like I said, we've covered a lot, but there's a lot of meat. I don't think a lot of people see that we need to be teaching our children and our adults and those able to vote in this country. You need to get a history lesson and understand where we came from, Why are you asking for the same change and same tyranny, that tyranny, and that thing, they say, I'd rather have, freedom than comfortable. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to give up my freedoms for comfortability. I'm not going to do that. I would rather, have a chance to be free and a chance for something to happen to me than I would to be, live comfortably under the protection of somebody else. The idea is we protect each other in this thing. We don't live under the protection of the king and the king's guard and or the dukes or anybody else that goes through there. As Americans, which is why we have the Second Amendment, we don't need to protect. We have the freedom to assemble. We have the freedom to come against tyranny. We have the ability to shake off these chains. Once again, once the evidence is there, the evidence is on the record. And let me explain this to people. The evidence is on the federal record now. When we talk about the case and everything else, the evidence is already on the record. Okay, especially for one state, two states actually getting ready to. If at any given time the people so choose in those two states to shake off the tyranny, even by force, it's 100% legal under the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence now. Why? Because the facts have been put on the record that you are committing these things. That's a hard truth of giving back the republic. And that's one thing you guys need to understand. Once we go through proving this stuff and the other stuff in states and it's put on the record, that meets the standard or the requirement by both the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence that says now we have a right and a duty to remove them, even if by force. Now, are they going to go quietly? No. But I guarantee you, if the people rise up, especially the parents realize this with their kids being stolen, and they start stepping up and their family starts stepping up and all this other stuff, I guarantee you're going to see some change. And there ain't a thing you can send in the National Guard or anything all you want, because they'll be called out on their oath. We're here to remove this. We have every right to do this, either by this or by force. That's what now, once again, that is not my words. This is what the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence says. Becca, I know you've been quiet. It sounds like you've got some sound issues. You're getting a lot of reverb every time you turn things on, or she's locked up. Wait, she's back, jumping around a little bit. But guys, I think, Becca, are you going to do a show later? Shake head, yes, no, no sound, locked up. Some issues. Yes.
Oh, there she goes.
No sound. Nope.
Are you doing the sound? You said yes, right? You said you're doing a show.
Okay, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a little bit of buzz there.
There we go. Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, there's a mic thing on the actual mic, so I didn't realize it was muted.
There you go.
Are you doing a follow-up show after this one then, Becca?
I was trying to get my friend Rose on the show. I sent her like a bunch of questions and stuff to, kind of give her a heads up of what we could discuss or whatever. But I forgot she had a gag order.
Did you see that?
And
one of those unconstitutional pieces of shit.
Did you see that we just had Josie on before?
Yeah, those ones.
Yeah.
Josie is now available.
Yeah, I was in there with you. Well, I wasn't in there.
Sweet. Yeah, I'd seen it on earlier.
Yep.
So. CPS Breaking News Network on YouTube. Also, you can follow us here on Gunning for CPS. If one of these shows end up playing, we tend to rebroadcast everything anyway. We're still working on the schedule for everybody, but like I said, everybody's going through stuff. I want to thank you guys for being here. Becca popping in a little bit here. Darren, thanks again for going through there. Once again, check out our website, breakingnews.com.
Bless you.
Thank you. A little dry. Weather change. It's fun up and down. We're getting the colder nights now.
You're cutting out, but I mean, I at least heard the sneeze.
But guys, catch us again next week. Same bat time, same bat channel here on Gunning for CPS. And don't forget to check out. We have swag now available for all the different shows. Here's a "What Would Charlie Do" shirt that's been designed. And those proceeds, like I said, Durant's got something with that where they're going to be donated. Everything for all of our show. Go check out the
Eric.
webpage. There's still some other things in the works as far as a program to help you guys out with CPS, all the way from your first initial when you meet the caseworker to all the way into federal court to help you with your documents, your things, and put everything in there. It's better than anything. It's a custom AI. Some bugs are still being worked out of it, but once again, that is in the works. That is coming. But stay tuned. We will definitely let you know when that stuff is coming out. Guys, it's been great. Thanks for coming and sharing with us. Catch us out next week. We'll try and pick up where we left off with the Declaration of Independence. But wow, what a powerful first couple of paragraphs that are just in there that they'll just blow your mind. And once again, that is the congressional one. That is the one that Congress passed. So make sure that you look out there. You're getting your good sources. You're getting it from reliable sources, and you're getting something that has not been put through some bullshit filter to get somebody's perspective. We have to get back to what our founding fathers took and intended when they wrote it, because if we don't go with that, then we have no understanding whatsoever what they meant when they spoke the words and put that pen to paper to free us to live under a constitutional republic. Guys, thanks again. We'll see you next week. And I'm going to hang out here a little bit backstage afterwards and meet with a few of the guys here. Love you guys. Spread the word for next week. We will be back next week, God willing, with everything else. And like I said, hopefully some great announcements with some great changes. Thanks again. Have a great night.